7 o'clock, 7:01. I will call the March 24th meeting of the Finance Committee to order. Present, we have Bill, Steve, Paul, Paula, Brandon, Zach, Gavin, Trace, and Bonnie. And I know the superintendent's going to be here at 7:30, so make sure to go through everything else and save that for then.
So we do have the highway superintendent here. We can start with highway.
Perfect.
How's everyone doing?
Thank you.
So I'm looking to get two positions. One to increase the salary budget. I'm looking for one position to replace the one that was lost last fiscal year, and another one to help offset the increase of the workload with the new town hall, council of aging, rails for trails, the additional sidewalks. To calculate it, I basically used the 2 operator 7 positions, which probably wouldn't be the case. That would actually hire 2 people at that grade, but it would be the worst case scenario. I'll try to keep it quick. I tried to calculate some of the increases in all the different workloads so I could try to justify this ask, but there's been a 17% increase in sidewalks for a total of 10.5 miles that we have to maintain. The mowing between the facilities and everything we do in town has increased 16.5%, which is about 53 miles of roadway, and perimeters of different facilities to mow and maintain. The parking lots increased quite a bit with a 30% increase. It's about 272,000 square feet. You know, right now it's mostly just plowing. Eventually it'll be repairs and things like that. There's also been a big increase in facility walkways. There wasn't many on some of the other areas in the past. It's about 940 linear feet from like 200. Some of the maintenance that would have to be performed in these different facilities. So the rails for trails is going to be trash removal, animal waste, leaf cleanup during the fall, mowing, grading the gravel portions that are going to wash out and deteriorate, trimming and removing the trees and limbs, clearing and maintenance of drainage, plowing and salting. The council of aging and the town hall, they're going to be pretty similar in the sense that the parking lots always have to be plowed. The sidewalks, which seems kind of menial, but it's actually increased the time to maintain and plow like exponentially. We've been trying to come up with creative ways to do that with the equipment that we have. Again, mowing, leaf cleanup. There's catch basins and retention ponds that are in some of these facilities. We already have 45 retention ponds around town. With the new facilities, it equates to like 55 acres of land that we have to, clear from mowing to tree trimming. Same with the catch basins. We have like 2,500 plus basins that we try to do on like a 1.5 year, 2 year rotation, repairing, cleaning, clearing during rainstorms. Again, it's just additional. It's kind of death by 1,000 cuts, to be honest. Shrubs and pruning that'll have to be addressed unless it's outsourced to outside contractors. Another area that it would help having the 2 employees is the vehicle maintenance. We have 1 mechanic. It kind of ends up being all year that I end up pulling 1 or even 2 highway guys from the road to help out. We have 33 highway vehicles and pieces of equipment. We help with some of the maintenance on the 26 police vehicles, other town vehicles as well. There's been new emissions laws that increase the cost of the vehicles that we're buying. In some cases, they're not as reliable. We've been trying to rehab and keep the older trucks going. It's a trend that a lot of other towns are doing. I think in the past, we've kept some of the smaller trucks for 10 years, the bigger trucks for about 20, trying to squeeze some life out of those older ones. They're really, in some cases, more reliable than the new equipment. What else? Basically, I think that's, the increased workload justifies the 2 salary positions. Or maybe other means will have to be explored to keep up with the increased workload. I don't want to inflate the budgets, but I do think we have to be realistic about the future maintenance as the town grows. It'll also help out in the winter. That'll probably be the last point I'll make. In the winter time right now, we have 10 employees. Luckily, the water department voluntarily gives us about 4 to 5 people to help, which is an enormous help. We had about 5 contractors the previous year, the previous winter. This winter that just passed, we only have 3. It's hard to kind of keep up and be competitive with other towns. I mean, there's raising costs in insurance and raising costs in vehicle maintenance. So basically, we have about 11 plow routes, just so you can understand what we handle is about 18 people, including the contractors that we employ, the water department that helps, and our guys. I would say it'd be more reasonable to have about 22 people, which obviously 2 positions doesn't help, but at least I could have 2 people on every route. And it would obviously make it more justifiable. And I'll quickly sum up the other budget items that would be adjusted, and it's really just everything to do with the 2 positions, so longevity pay, uniforms and clothing allowance, and the only other item would be the repaired office equipment, just to cover the copy machine, because this year we went over on spending because it was cut, so. And you guys have any questions?
Anyone have questions?
For your overtime, it says that you've already spent about $6,300 through December. Do you anticipate you're going to spend more than the $10,000 budgeted for the overtime with all the additional work that's been needed?
Oh, you're saying we already maxed out the overtime?
Well, close to, I
Yeah,
guess.
honestly, probably slightly, I would imagine, just with, it's hard to, with windstorms and trees down, everything else should be pretty calculable, but there's variables.
So I would think, though, if you aren't able to get these additional positions, that overtime, 10,000 may need to
Possibly be increased, yeah, fair enough, yep.
Any questions? Go ahead, Bob.
Bob Kimball, 51 Pine Street. I'm also on the Cemetery Commission. I'm here tonight to speak a bit about that. The cemeteries, in our opinion, are probably the best they've ever looked. We have to remind ourselves that we have a new one on Newland Street that we have to maintain now, on top of everything else they're doing. And Jared alluded to the new properties we have here. If you just look at some of the additional space that these guys are going to have to maintain and take care of, it's just a perfect example of the overload that this department is now experiencing. In particular, the community building is much bigger than the old one, and the grass areas are much more. And of course, the bike path you mentioned too, that's something we're going to have to maintain and take care of. What he didn't mention was the town of Norton's fortunate enough to have highway department that's able to take care of the school facilities during snowstorms. Most towns have to hire outside contractors to do that. We're fortunate we don't have to do that. We try to work within our budget, but the Newland Street Cemetery is getting occupied, and it's getting bigger. And we've got some other plans for it too in the Cemetery Commission, trying to get everything done on that. But he definitely could use some extra help. I'm not sure 1 person, 2 person, whatever it might be, but his workload has expanded. And I think it's very, very important that we try to help him out in any way we can. Also remind the Finance Committee that the Hicks account does generate $200,000 a year in income for the town, and the purpose of that is to help set off some of the costs of the cemetery department. That's the purpose of it, so, but thank you.
Yes, Bob.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Bob, hang on a second. What happens to the fees collected when somebody buys a plot? Where does that go?
Well, it goes back to the perpetual care, or it goes back to the town, depending on which one it is. There are different fees that are applied on the cemetery department. Some of them you do go back into perpetual, but most of them go back into the general fund. They go back to the town.
The average is about $45,000 a year.
Jared, just a quick comment. Other towns are using the spray in the wintertime, and I don't think it's doing them any justice. I think the yard roads are far better, far quicker than most of the neighboring towns that are doing it.
Yeah,
Keep up the good work with what
thanks.
you do.
Yeah, definitely look into it. I mean, there's benefits, there's also detriments, and it's costly, and the initial setup is very costly, so, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Jared.
Thank you.
Jared, there's also 3 articles. We could just go over those
Sure.
while Jared's here. The first article is Article 4, and that's seeking $31,000 from free cash for tree services. 31,000.
Oh, yeah, the article's used for cranes for trees that we can't process ourselves when they're, over a certain height. We use it for the police details for when the crane comes in, when we do tree work as well. A tub grinder, which processes all the logs, debris, and brush that we generate throughout the year. Sometimes it's yearly, sometimes it's maybe once every 2 years. Usually yearly, especially the way things have been going. We also use it for stump grinding, to remove obviously the stumps of the trees after we have the crane come in or we process them. That's about it.
Questions? Go ahead, Tom.
We usually do this every year, so what was it last year?
If I have anything on that. I think I do have it here. Just give me 1 second.
Freaking mess.
There we go. You gotta forgive me, I know I have it in here, I don't know why I
I
can't.
think it was 31,000, does that
That
sound
sounds
right?
about right, it was, yeah. I think we have about 12,000 left right now, if I'm not mistaken, and we didn't do the tub grinding yet this year, and all the stump grinding. We try to save a little bit for this time of year so we can get some details for tree trimming with our tree truck. I apologize for not being able to bring up the paper.
That's okay. Thank you.
Good one.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I think we've discussed this probably a dozen times already, but this is a recurring expense year after year. Why is it a separate article not in his budget?
It's just something that if we can't fund it and he can't do the work, then we don't fund it. So it's just an extra service.
I mean, to speak to your point, I suppose, there is quite a bit of room at those yards that we process the material. If it was the case where you couldn't fund it for a year, I wouldn't think it would be a good thing. But if it had to be sacrificed, you probably can get away with it. In some years, you probably wouldn't be able to get away with it. It would overload the yards that we stockpile the material at.
Mike, do you know when the last time was that we didn't spend it?
We've done it every year we've used it.
Jared, I would also think there'd be liability if you had a tree removed and you didn't pull the stump and then somebody hits it or something like that, that you might be open to litigation and stuff too, so I think it's something that's a
Possibly.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just to go back a second, Jared, where are you right now on your snow and ice? Do you know?
Yeah, 103,000 over, I believe. Almost all of it is our employees' overtime salaries and material. We used a lot of material this year. We only had the subcontractors come in twice. There wasn't a lot of plowable snow, but we had ice storms. We had a lot of precipitation that froze. It ends up being the case that you end up doing storms that are probably 30% longer than usual, just laying down material, trying to keep the road open and clear and clean.
Other questions?
So Madam Chair? Oh,
Did you want to go?
no, first I don't.
All right, come on up.
Roger Marsan, 62 Power Street. I'd just like to go back to the tree pruning and cleaning for a minute. I really don't understand why this isn't part of the budget. We continuously use it year after year, and you may not think it's important until that one storm comes and then everybody's power gets knocked out, and then you're going to ask, well, why didn't we cut back these trees? So I think that this should be part of the budget and not a supplemental part. Thank you.
All right, anyone Mike, is that a possibility at this point to build it into the budget?
Yeah, we could add it in under his police details, we'd put some, and then under purchase of services, probably. Have to go over that with you, whether you want that under equipment rental or purchase of services.
That'd be probably mostly purchase of services, like you mentioned. Definitely police detail, kind of see if there's anything else we'll break into. Have to think about it.
Is that overly Granger style, and we should wait till next year to do that then, Jared, or is it?
Maybe it might not hurt to really look it over a little better.
It'd be easier that way.
If I'm being honest, it'd be good to look at it.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we approve the $31,000 listed in Article 4.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Bill?
Yes?
Steve?
My only question, so we're definitely ruling out we cannot put it in the budget this year?
I think, yeah, I think it sounds like it's going to be too challenging this year, but I think for sure next year we can,
I feel strongly it should be part of the budget, so,
I agree.
and the only reason I'm gonna vote, so if I vote no on this, I don't wanna jeopardize you doing this cleanup, which is very important, so what do we do? I can vote no to the article because I think it belongs in the budget, but I don't wanna lose the funding.
But that occurs for a lot of other items too, we're not pushing here, but we're not legislating, Steve.
This one would be-
I think there might have to be another line item where it would be for equipment as well, because there is small items, consumables that the tree department uses that we have to pay for as well. So I think it would be purchase of services, it would be details, and there would have to be some other type of account, some line item.
I think talking about putting it in the budget's been a 2-year conversation now, it's still not there. So my no is only because I'd rather see it in the budget and not an article, so I'm gonna vote no.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
through you, but I believe he can make a motion to amend the budget and add that into the budget if he wishes.
The only issue, Zach, was that he needs it in multiple spots, it can't be just in one line. So he hasn't got that ready to break out. That's why I figure if he earnestly knows we want to do it, let him do it for next year, so he knows he puts the right amount, whichever lines he needs to handle what he's got to do.
We haven't got to voting on the budget yet, so why not? Correct. Right, which is,
But when would I have to have it by? I mean,
you want to put it in the budget.
End of the week.
Is that doable?
I think I could try my hardest to get it in there, yeah.
So Mike, can I just ask another question? If for some reason it didn't all end up in the right line item, isn't there flexibility for him to move from one line item to the other?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So it's not like it's do or die, I could get it in the wrong.
Okay, yeah.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
why can't we just put a line that says tree services?
I like that idea.
Would that be too complicated?
I think I could do that in a week.
Now, just under purchase of services that you already have, you don't need a new line.
Okay.
So do you want to try a second and we'll let it die?
So moved.
I'll withdraw the motion then and let it
Okay.
go into the budget.
Okay.
The next article is Article 18, and that's $3,000 free cash for collection and disposal of discarded items abandoned along roadways throughout the town that require special handling.
What number is that, Mike?
3,000. It's Article 18.
Jesus.
By the way, when you look at the article list, you'll notice that we did take off, as you said last meeting, the articles that weren't recommended. Those off.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Ditto.
to take the words out of my mouth, can we do the same thing with this one?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I think we spoke about this last week. Maybe you mentioned wanting to keep this as an article so the community understands the financial impact of this process.
And you said it's 3,000, is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
Make a motion, we approve Article 18 for $3,000.
Second?
All right, motion and second. Any further discussion? Okay. Bill?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Brandon?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Trace? Yes. Bonnie?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
Okay, I hear you, sorry. I have a yes as well.
Is that 10?
So, all 11 of us are here, right?
And Article 15, this is a petition for a special legislation for authorization to pay a vendor for work performed notwithstanding non-compliance with applicable procurement requirements. This is for a vendor that paved a parking lot.
Timothy Plain Cemetery.
Any explanation as to why it wasn't followed or anything?
Yeah, just that it was, the procurement process was followed between the $10,000 and $50,000 threshold, and it ended up coming in at 84. And it was,
So what that is, with the 10 to 50, you just have to get 3 prices from companies. But once it goes over the 50, you have to go out and do the full bid proposal.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
may I ask why it went over so much?
just the improper procurement process was followed for that price. It wasn't that it was an excess amount. It still was the lowest bid between multiple bidders, just wrong process.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
so explain to me what this article is supposed to do, so I understand.
So this is special legislation that our attorneys are filing. They've done it before in other situations that have happened in other towns. And we need legislation approval to be able to pay this vendor
How much money do we owe?
$84,000.
Is that the amount that officially needs to go in that, Mike, total?
No, the money's already been appropriated.
No, but I mean, in the actual article, it doesn't show.
No, it would be, he can be paid $49,999 up front, and this would be the balance of that.
So do we need to have a figure in that, Mike, before we
No.
move?
No, it's just to authorize us to pay the vendor.
Other questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we support Article 15.
Second?
All right, a motion and a second. Bill?
Yes.
Steve? Paul?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Brandon?
Yes.
Zach?
Yes.
Gavin?
Yes.
Trace? Yes. Bonnie?
Yes.
Kevin?
Yes.
And I am a yes as well.
And while Jared's here, if you want to talk about any of the items you have in capital while you're here?
Yeah, pretty simple. I think it's the remaining payment on one of our Peterbilt dump trucks, $28,000, I think. And then the only other thing was the replacement for the highway department roof. It's been leaking more and more every day. We've been patching it in various ways that we can. It's getting to the point where it's nearing the end of its life. I have the exact date. I can't remember when it was last replaced, but it's been over, probably older than I am.
Not very old.
Not very old. Too old for a roof.
Why don't you say it's as old as Keith?
No, I don't want to say that. I'm on camera. But yeah, so I got some preliminary quotes to get a ballpark, and that's what I came up with. They were honestly across the board, kind of across the board. Obviously, that's going to be going out to bid, and they'll probably be hopefully less than what I'm asking, but I'd like to be safe.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Mike, we have a facilities and grounds committee that's active in town. Is this something that they should be looking at, our town buildings, and see where the needs are and be able to prioritize them year after year so we're not hit with unexpected $500,000 bills?
Yeah, we have a permanent building committee that, depending on how this goes, Jared will go to them. And I know he's mentioned it to the building committee in the past.
Because it'd be nice to get an assessment of all the town buildings, Mike, so we would know where we stand and know that other roofs aren't in the same position and that suddenly we're gonna go broke just on roofs. It's not that I'm supposed to go through it.
No, I get it, yeah.
Yes.
Same question, but a little bit more. Has the current building committee reviewed these properties and how they rank them?
They have, and they're meeting tomorrow night, again, the building committee to make recommendations to you.
So do they have an inventory of all the things that need to be done?
Capital needs to run it, I'm sorry, permanent building committee, I don't contact them, they've been obviously very busy with 2 buildings, so there is funds that have been set aside for a study of needs in other buildings.
Any other questions? Last item for Jared?
That's it.
All right.
John Harrop is
Thank you,
on,
guys.
and
Thank
Frank,
you. Thank you.
from sewer budget. John, who's up, John? You or Frank?
We're both here. We had a commissioners meeting and couldn't get over there in time, so we were here at the office.
All right, you just want to review the sewer budget and how you're able to drop salaries and wages from $369,000 that was appropriated this year to $331,000.
Say that again, Mike, sorry.
That's okay. Can you just go over how you're able to drop from $369,309 that was appropriated in FY '25 for salaries and wages down to $331,371 for next year?
Yeah, so we have a vacant position in the sewer department, and we kept the vacant position on our salary sheet, but we were carrying funding for it when we didn't really have any immediate plans to fill the position. So we just eliminated it from the budgeting sheet.
I'm looking at the supplemental schedule, and when you have the foot for all the various line items and salary, there's a variance here of 247. So with the detail that you have on the second page for summarizing all the salaries, stipends is 392,200, and the budget is 398,471. What's missing?
Actually, I haven't been able to, I have to work with the office staff. I haven't been able, for some reason the math on that formula isn't working. 331, 370 plus 60,000 alone is almost 392,200, so I'm not entirely sure why that's not balancing correctly. I'm gonna have to, I was tweaking with that at the end of last week, and I haven't been able to figure out exactly why the math isn't working, but if you plug it into a calculator, the numbers listed there add up to 398, but for whatever reason, that bottom number I can't get to come through correctly.
Other questions?
Want me to move on to water?
Sure.
John any highlights on the water budget. The main thing I think that is highlighted is the increase in road repair for asphalt.
Yeah, so we had a very busy year in the streets, busier than usual, for sure, but the cost of asphalt is going up, and if we continue to have pipe malfunctions, we don't want to run into an issue where we don't have enough allotted amount to cover it. I know that there's wiggle room in the budget to overrun a line item, but this year, I mean, we had a very, very busy late summer and the fall, and with the spring, we might surpass the 25,000 number. So I mean, I don't anticipate it probably getting quite to that amount, but with the cost of mix going up significantly and the amount of work we've been doing, we felt like that was a pretty safe number.
Questions?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
some of the remaining balances as of February 6th are significantly higher than like the halfway mark. Is that something that looking like a lot of excess there, and we could cut down on some of next year's funding, or what's with that?
Depending on what the line item is, some of it is the amount of times per year we incur a cost on that line item. A lot of the things, we will spend more of up to a certain date in the winter, and then it drops off in the spring. That's usually how we do it. It's not necessarily just halfway through the year. Halfway through the year is indicative of how it's going to go the rest of the fiscal year. So that's where we came up with these numbers. We felt like, we look at also what we have spent in previous years, unless there's a dramatic hike in the cost of what the line item is covering.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
what are we using for day-to-day engineering and professional services?
Weston Sampson is our contracted general engineer.
And you're using them for, without any projects going forward, what is their function? I'm just trying to get what their function is on a day-to-day basis. What are they advising you on?
Frank, do you want to hop in here? Or I can take it, whatever you want. Everybody hear me?
Yep.
Good evening, everybody. They're used sporadically as needed for multiple different things. We have probably half a dozen or more projects that are in the works, ongoing. So it's constant communication between water engineers and sewer engineers with our departments. So there is a specific line item in there that covers us for the annual salary for their general services contracts.
So that's for just day-to-day maintenance on the buildings, or are they doing engineering for future projects, capital projects?
There's everything we discussed with them. We're required to have discussions with them for DEP for everything we do on the water side. We also use their sewer division for when there's projects that come up that require scope that's outside of our knowledge or time constraints.
Okay, thank you. And I'm glad to see you back. Hope you're doing better.
Glad to be back. Thanks.
Any other questions on the water budget?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
what is inter-fund operating transfers?
Those get calculated at the end when we know what the budgets are. Those are the costs to the water and sewer enterprise for services that are provided by the town itself. So like health insurance, they pay the direct cost. Other insurance, they pay the direct cost. Then as far as salaries, a certain percentage of my salary, the town accountants department, the water, the treasurer collectors department, they pay certain percentage for those based on the budgets.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question.
Hi, Roger Marsan, 62 Power Street. Could you tell me what the repairment for buildings is? I see that there's still $88,000 in there, and we're asking for $100,000 more. I'm not sure he can hear me through this microphone. He probably might need through one of those microphones.
Frank, did you hear the question?
Yeah, Roger, I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. So it's basic. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, hello?
We hear you.
Yeah, so it's for, if we had a possibility of repairing a couple of small roofs on our buildings this past year. We didn't end up doing it. It's for, we have several buildings as far as well houses, pump houses for sewer, our main garage here, our office here. Anything that needs to be repaired at any of those during the course of the year comes out of that line item. We've been fortunate, knock wood, this year we haven't had to do much. Like I said, we might be tackling a couple of roofs that, not huge roofs or buildings that need to have huge roof jobs done, but smaller jobs. Same with anything else, painting, anything like that comes out of that line item. So we haven't really done much of that work this year, but I don't anticipate that line item not being used regularly going forward.
So I guess my question, is this something that is a seasonal thing and you may need to use more of this money coming into the spring before we get to the town meeting?
It's very possible.
And just on one point, if that 88,551 doesn't stay there, so if they don't spend it,
Is that going to be returned to the general fund if they don't spend it?
no, it would be returned to the water enterprise fund.
Got it. Thank you.
Sorry, I guess I misunderstood the question there, Roger. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Any other questions on the water budget?
So motion.
Jen?
Next have the school budget. Thank you, John and Frank.
Jen?
Here.
Just email it to me.
Yeah, it's in the It's not the whole book, I don't want to bore you by going through the entire book.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for having us tonight. I also appreciate a little bit of flexibility in going last. I had a strategic planning meeting earlier this evening, and there's just simply not enough hours in the week. So thank you guys for squeezing us in.
Did you have the whole book that you wanted to put up?
I do have the whole book.
It should be right there, and is there an attachment? I'll just walk. We'll just walk through the book. Whatever works for you, Mr. Eunice. So thank you all. I'm here to present the FY26 budget to all of you this evening. As you know, last year, when we were looking at level services, we came in with quite the high number, we were looking at a 12% increase for level services for FY25. This committee certainly does not need a recap of last spring. However, I think it's important for us to note that we ended the year with 29 positions less than we started the year with, and ultimately closed the $3.4 million deficit in that way. Fortunately, over the summer, through staff attrition, we were able to bring back 3 of those staff positions. This was simply not by any change on the bottom line, but just retirements and resignations, and we worked with the school committee to identify where the best places were to reinstate some of that support. Before I kind of dive into the actual budget numbers, this number comes first in your packet. This is our historical enrollment data. And as you can see, we have continued to see a decrease in enrollment over time. The thing that's really interesting about this is if you were to take out this exact same chart from last year that I shared with you in your budget packet, where it is showing you a negative 7.3 or negative 7.5 over the next few years, that number was actually to the good a year ago. So enrollment data is very difficult for us to keep up with, and trends change from time to time. This information comes from NESDEC, which is the New England School Development Council, and they run these enrollment projections for districts all across New England. The data down below is based on our projected birth rates. And as someone who has tried to predict incoming kindergarten enrollment numbers for the last 14 years, let me tell you, birth rates are never something that we can predict. And even when we have birth rate data, people move during that time, they send their kids to private school, they do academic redshirting, all of these other things. So it's an interesting informational piece for all of you to have this data, but we also have information that we know about consistent building in our community as well. So that's not necessarily something that NESDEC looks at. There's mostly just what our current enrollment data is and what the birth rates are locally. And then this is our enrollment data that we do every single month. My office updates this based on school and grade level. We take a look at our school choice students as well as students that are enrolled in the Reads Deaf and Hard of Hearing program that makes their home here in Norton. The information in your packet is our October enrollment data. And the reason that I'm sharing with you October data is because that is what the Department of Education uses when they take a look at our per pupil expenditure and our funding formulas for the upcoming year. So while we may have students move in or out, it's really those October 1st numbers that make all the difference, and that's why that is included in this packet. Thank you, Mr. Units. All right, so we are once again this year asking for a level service budget. And a level service budget means we simply want to keep what we currently have in our schools in terms of staffing and programs to maintain a level of quality education for all of our students. Our final FY25 budget was the $35,535,601. Thank you to the community of Norton. And in order for us to maintain all of those services, and again, I reminded you last year that was 12%. This year is a 4.96% increase, or $1.7 million. One of the things we also try to share with you each year is the different cost centers. There's a lot of conversation in our community about special education and the costs of some of our programs. I like to, instead of say special education versus general education, we look at it from a perspective of mandated education. So what that means is not just our students on IEPs, but also students that perhaps their first language is not English, they're considered English language learners. Those are mandated educational services that we have to provide a certain number of hours for those students each week. We also have to provide services for students that are homeless. So under the McKinney-Vento Act, we have obligations to ensure that students that may be experiencing homelessness are still able to get to and from school. If Norton Public Schools is considered their school of origin, it does not matter where they currently reside. We are responsible for providing transportation to and from that current address, whether it is a shelter or a rental or something along those lines, until they find a permanent home. And as I'm sure you guys all know, the system is extremely broken. And for some families, that can take 6 months to a year, 18 months. It's really hard for us to predict how long that will go on. Thank you, Mike. I always like to show you kind of how we get to this bottom number, because I think it's very easy for us to, wave a couple flags and flash some lights, and all of a sudden you're at, 1.7 million. So what really goes into that? We always start with our final appropriation for the current school year, and then we look at those costs that are really not always within our control in terms of contractual obligations. So our biggest cost center, we have just under 400 employees, is contractual obligations for staff. This is looks like it's going to be $1,723,177. I think it's very important for you all to know that that is all staff members within Norton Public Schools. That includes our administrative team, every single teacher, whether they're general education or special education, our paraprofessionals, our custodians, our administrative assistants. Christine and I have the great honor and privilege of negotiating with 3 of our bargaining units this year. We are negotiating with our custodians, we are negotiating with our administrative assistants, and we are negotiating with our teachers and paraprofessionals unit. So this is the best estimate that we can give you at this time, because 2 out of 3 of those negotiations are still ongoing. And for those of you that have sat on the negotiations side on town things, you know that we all have to negotiate in good faith. And I can't say we're only going to do X. So we have a number within this budget that we feel is a reasonable increase for those units. And that's what that obligation will kind of come out to be if all is said and done. If, for example, we're not able to negotiate that number that we had in mind, we're going to have to look to make cuts in other areas in order for us to get this budget to balance. Because we all know that the timeline that you are all under is not necessarily lining up with the contractual and negotiations timeline. If for some reason we're able to negotiate something that is a lower rate than what we currently have in there as a placeholder, then we will be able to have some savings in our budget, which is always a great thing. As you'll see, there are some areas here where we actually have a decrease from our current fiscal budget for the upcoming school year. So out of district special education costs, these are for students who we are not able to meet their educational needs here within our school community, because they might just have a really specified need that we're not able, that we don't have a program for. This entails getting students to and from paying that tuition, and then right below it, you'll see a decrease to out-of-district special education transportation of $40,000. So we are actually anticipating overall a decrease of about $66,000 for those services. It's very important for me to share a couple things with you about out-of-district special education costs. Number one, this is not for us to send students to Bishop Vian or Xaverian. Those are private schools that families take care of that on their own. This is for specialized special education schools where a student may have a particular educational need that we are not able to meet here in our town. It's also very important for you all to know that based on the cost of these out-of-district placements, the district is obligated to cover the first $50,000 of any placement for a student in which we send them out of district. After that $50,000, we are reimbursed as a community through something called Circuit Breaker. Circuit Breaker is a very big discussion at the state level right now. When it was first put into place, the state was supposed to cover 100% of those costs, and back at that time it was a lower amount, it was $40,000 for a long period of time. They were supposed to cover every single dollar over and above our $50,000 threshold. Over the last several years, the highest they have reimbursed us is at 75%. And that number fluctuates every single year based on the budget that is set at the state level. And we typically do not know what that reimbursement is going to be until roughly mid-July, once the governor has set their budget and it's been signed and everything else. They are also supposed to cover the costs of transportation. That number also fluctuates. Again, from year to year, the average is 75. There was one year, I think 2 years ago, when I was just coming into this new role, where we were told we were going to get 75%. And when the numbers came out in July, we got 57. So someone got their numbers confused when they were making commitments earlier in the spring. But it was definitely a very unpleasant surprise for us, thinking that you're going to get one number and then you'd get something totally different. We have mandated increases to our in-district special education programs of $90,000. That could be students that will be entering a new program for the upcoming school year, and maybe we need to take a look at class size ratios and add a paraprofessional. One of the things that we found for the upcoming school year is we have a lot of kids that are going to be moving from the Yale to the middle school, or from 8th grade to the high school. And what we've done, instead of saying we're going to need 4 new special education positions, we've really looked carefully at our numbers and our enrollment in our ratios and said, okay, if that's going to happen, can we move this person from one building to another? So that is how we were able to get to this 4.96, by being really creative and really thoughtful about where we needed to spend additional funds versus where we just needed to change some things up. And then we also have an increase in contracted transportation for in-district students of $49,000. Those are our big yellow buses that all students many students participate in. We do collect user fees for families that ride the bus that are outside the regulation of what we're required to transport. Every year, we bring in roughly between $130,000 and $135,000 of fees for transportation. Our transportation bill is over $1 million. So while people are subsidizing the yellow bus transportation, it is definitely nowhere close to what we're actually paying out. And then we have some decreases in supplies and testing materials, as well as operations and management costs, which gets us to the full ask of $37,298,231. And this brings you through some of our line-by-line information here. I'm going to ask Mr. Units to keep going, unless there are questions specifically on anything that I've just said or on this page itself.
I have a question.
Yep.
Again, we're not the school committee, we're the finance committee, but salary ranges on principals, it looks like it ranges from $135,000 to nearly $400,000. How is that?
Well, I will assure you, sir, that there is no one in this district making $400,000.
It says
I'm sorry?
It says $370,000.
So that is multiple people.
Oh, okay.
So it is not just the principal, it is also the assistant principal and the dean of students.
And that's, Jen, why Dr. O'Neill, we were
Yes.
looking to have that broken down.
So we
it would be a
shared-
little more obvious.
Yep, so we shared some good salary data with Sandy. I hope that was,
I did pass that on.
okay, thank you, perfect, yep. So yes, so that is definitely multiple people there. So if you take a look, the same thing at the middle school. We have as a principal and an assistant principal. So when you're looking at that number there versus LGN, it's just a one-man show for our smallest school. Mr. Schleicher, did you have something else?
Just the figure that you started this year's budget with the 35 million and change. How is that looking to pan out coming into the year? Will there be any excess, or is it going to be close to the?
We're in pretty good shape at this moment. One of the things that is always a challenge for us is substitute teachers, and then also people going out on leaves. So we have, let's be real, education is a very female-dominated field. Typically, people have their own young families often, so we have people that you start the year and then they tell you that they're going to be leaving in February because they're having a baby, which is so wonderful for them, but then we're paying them to be out sick, and then we're also paying someone to cover their class. But then we also have other things. You know, we had a staff member who's been with us for many, many years retire in January and move to Florida, and so happy for her, which it's, you know, we were able to bring someone in at a sub rate versus paying her salary of someone who had been with the district for over 25 years. So it actually goes both ways. So Christine usually sends out a monthly update in regards to where we are financially, and so you should receive those from the chair, and it gives you a good idea. I believe we're, you know, right now we're a little bit to the good at the moment, but I knock on everything when I say those types of things because staffing can change minute to minute, and then also we always talk about special education and student placements. Those are very much a moving target as well. Thank you. So this is where we try to break down those mandated costs again. And so as you can see, we are taking a look at those line items under mandated education that really fall under this category. So we are looking at those administrators that are within these roles, the actual teachers, the medical therapeutic services, paraprofessionals, counselors. You can also see that we include those out-of-district tuitions and transportation in these lines as well. And you can even see that circuit breaker aid. So for the current school year, we are projecting to use about $1.5 million of circuit breaker aid to offset the tuition and transportation costs. The circuit breaker aid is not something that we could roll over and use in our regular budget. It has to be used for tuition and out-of-district expenses. And then we are projecting $1,685,000 of circuit breaker revenue for the upcoming school year. And I'm sure you're all looking at that one over like about 3/4 of the way down that says other, and it's in a 50% increase, right? I know. So that is where I talked about in-district needs. So this is where I mentioned that we have a huge number of students that are in some of our specialized programs, and so therefore adding a paraprofessional to support their needs, that is something that we've had to do through the course of this year, and we take that in the budget and kind of make best do with what we can. Over the winter break, the holiday break, we had 7 new students move into Norton. 7. None of them moved into Norton Links, because that was my first question when I knew it opened right before the break. 7 students that all had IEPs that required a specialized placement for them. That's a huge amount of students that you cannot plan for.
Yes.
I'm just wondering, can you give us, so in here you've got English language learners, homeless transportation, what are the counts? From one year over the next, and then the total for this upcoming budget that you estimate?
I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but we have about 500 students in the district that are on IEPs, so special education plans. And I'm more than happy to give you exact numbers tomorrow, Steve, but I'm going to do this off the top of my head for you a little bit. I would say in terms of our English language learners, we have about 35 to 40 students that are considered students that their first language is not English. I will tell you that when I first took over teaching and learning, I didn't know I was in charge of the English language learner program, like no one told me until like 5 months in, and I was like, wait, okay, thanks, that was good info I could have had 5 months ago. But we had 3 students, and we contracted 4 hours a week with a local collaborative. And so one of the things that's interesting about our L population here in Norton is we don't have one primary language. Like, you go to a community like Stoughton, and a lot of the L's there speak Portuguese. But we have about 7 languages that we provide interpretation and translation for our families. And there's no really strong top one, which is really interesting too. The other thing that's important for us to know is when we look at the number of L's, students can be on a wide range of proficiency when it comes to English. So we are required that students must reach a certain level of proficiency before we are allowed to exit them from our program. And even once we exit them, we have to monitor them for 4 years. And these are all state regulations from the Department of Education. So you have some students that have absolutely no spoken or written language, English at all, have a very difficult time kind of understanding what the staff is saying to them. What we find is that our youngest students, kindergarten, first grade, they go right into the classroom and they are the ones that pick it up the fastest. And then we have other students that have a really good sense of reading and writing and speaking and listening and communicating with their peers and educators. But if they don't get that particular score, you still can't exit them until you have that score.
So do we have, let's just say in the older grades, do we have kids that are older than the normal age group for that year?
No.
Do we have 22-year-olds?
No, we do not. They're grouped with their age level peers as where they would be appropriately in school.
So how does that, they can't exit until they pass that?
Well, they can't exit the EL program. So they could graduate from Norton High School still as an English language learner, and we can provide them services until they graduate. What we find is that, often students that have been with us from the very beginning do really well, and they're able to make progress and kind of test out over time. And then we still monitor them for the 4 years. But it's more challenging when you have students come to the country as a middle schooler or as a high schooler and have very limited English. It takes much longer for them to become acclimated to the academic setting. And so we have a lot of different resources. Our teachers are absolutely incredible. Every kid has a phone, right? And so using Google Translate on the phone is a great way for teachers and students to be able to communicate. So that is really beneficial as well. But I appreciate that question. And then when it comes to McKinney-Vento and homeless families, I'm going to say we probably have somewhere between 8 and 10 families at this moment that we're working with and that we're responsible for transporting. But I will be more than happy to get you actual accurate counts, and I'll send those to Sandy tomorrow.
All right, and thank you.
Thank you.
Do we get funds that are targeted for these needs from the state?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the circuit breaker transportation, that is all through the Massachusetts Department of Education. That is funding that we get from the state. There are some federal entitlement grants that we also receive. So right now, Norton receives about $1 million of federal entitlement grants. And that is all included in your packet. I'll make sure that I point it out when we come back. But it's about $750,000 under IDEA, which is special education. We get about $270,000 from Title I, which is to support students in reading and math, typically low-income students. And we've been able to use it in all 3 of our elementary schools for a number of years. Title IIA is for staff professional development. That is also a federal grant. And then Title III is for English language learners. So Norton as a whole does not have enough English language learners for us to qualify for that grant on our own. So what we did is we went out and we formed a collaborative with Seekonk Public Schools, and our numbers together qualify us. So we are the fiduciary responsibility for the grant. And our Assistant Superintendent, Dr. Ackerman, works with the Assistant Superintendent there, and we share the funds based on a per pupil expenditure. We do professional development together, we do curriculum writing together. But I think so one of the questions that came up when I met with people at our budget forum, and then the budget hearing, was what does the potential shutdown of the Department of Education at the federal level, what does that mean for these grants? And so my understanding, based on my connections and network and work that I've done in the past, is that for the FY26 budget, that funding is going to be there. There are no guarantees for FY27 or any other year moving forward. And I think it's really important for us to consider that, because that's $1 million that we get on top of whatever the community is able to provide us each year. And those go to, really targeted things as well.
So the expense numbers that we see here, are these net of these reimbursements?
It is, so if you take a look at the circuit breaker down the bottom, that is the net of the circuit breaker reimbursement, correct?
Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
just to touch on that subject, I'm more curious than anything. You have a child that's, say, 14, 15 years old, comes from another country, doesn't speak any English, and what happens, and may have never seen the inside of a classroom. Then you put them in high school, what happens to that child?
So we have a really amazing L team who are teachers who work with our EL students and kind of pick those kiddos up and take them under their wing. And oftentimes we find that our students, especially at the high school, the way that our programming works there is they're enrolled in English language support, just like you would take a class, right? So instead of taking Spanish, you're taking English language support. And we have a variety of different levels. So we have like level 1, which is for students that are really, at that very beginning stage of learning English. And they typically see the teacher for more than one block a day. Sometimes it's 2 blocks, and they might have like an academic support block as well. So they kind of take care of their own, and a lot of kids will identify with another student that's in their class, but it's very challenging for both the students and the educators, because it's hard for the students to come in where this class is 60 minutes long and this teacher is talking about something in science that uses all of this academic vocabulary, and the student doesn't know the basic English words, never mind the academic vocabulary. So it's the role of the English language teacher to help them access, to work with the teacher to make accommodations based on whatever the needs are for that particular student, to help them scaffold, to go through the academic vocabulary with the student, pre-teach it for them. It can be challenging, and the first few weeks can be really difficult for those students. So I think that we're really fortunate to have a great team and people who are really welcoming and accepting and willing to do whatever it takes to help kids be successful.
Most of your teachers required to have some training in the as well?
Yes, every single teacher in Massachusetts is required to, if they're working with a student that is an English language learner, they're required to take a course. It's called the Sheltered English Immersion course, and it's a one-time thing that you earn the endorsement. As an administrator, there's a special course for us to help evaluate teachers that are working with English language learners. So they all need to take that, and then every 5 years, teachers get, they update their certification, you renew your certification. And as part of that, you have to have at least 15, I want to say credits, just to make it easy for everyone. Yeah, PDPs, professional development points. You must have educators in your family, sir. We're all required to have those 15 PDPs or credits towards English language education during that time as well.
Promise, last one.
Yep.
Can you give an example of in special education expenses for mandated education, administration and clerical? What would that requirement be?
So we have a director of special education who, her role is to oversee everything that department does. I laugh that I wouldn't want her job on a bet, but people say that about my job too. So then we also have our director of counseling and therapeutic services, and they have an administrative assistant. Yeah, and that administrative assistant also does transportation. Big and little yellow buses. Of course. All right, Mr. Guinness, would you mind just scrolling up a tiny bit on this page? I want to share some of this data, and these graphs are very small, so you have to put your glasses on for them, and unfortunately in this version they're not color-coded. But I think it's really important for us to talk about creating programs in district versus sending students out of district. So if you take a look at the graph that is on the right, the orange color, and again I apologize, so the column on the right-hand side, that is the number of students that were out of district. And in 2019, it was close to 50 students that were out of district. And for each of those 50 students that we were not able to meet their educational needs here, and we sent them, whether to it was a private school or a collaborative, we had to pay a tuition, and we had to pay for them to get to and from school on a daily basis. If there were students that needed a one-on-one paraprofessional, we pay for that. So what we've tried to do over the years, and you know, I give a lot of this credit to the people that have come before me, and Dr. Bayetta, Jean Sullivan, who was our director of PPS for a number of years, we created programs in district. And so if you were to come and see our schools, I could walk you around to several programs. We have a program that is specifically for students on the autism spectrum. We have a program for students that have language-based learning disabilities. We have a program for students that have social, emotional, and behavioral disabilities, and more. And those programs, every time we're able to create a program here and staff it with a highly qualified teacher and maybe 2 or 3 paraprofessionals, depending on the number of students in the classroom, that cost is substantially less than sending those 8 students that may be in that classroom out to collaboratives or private settings. So as you can see, as we've increased the number of programs over the years, the number of students that we have out of district has actually decreased, which is a win any way you look at it. Right now, we have about 37 students out of district as of today. So those are things that we're really proud of, because number one, it's a cost savings for the district, but more important than that, it allows families to keep all of their students in their community. It allows children to be in school with their peers and not on a bus for maybe an hour each way every single day. So those are things that we're really, really proud of. And then at the bottom of the page, you can see how that number has kind of fluctuated from year over year, and what the special education costs are to send those students out of district. The next page, I'm going to go into general education, and what I think it's important for me to share with you here on this one is that when I say general education, I mean everything else. It's general education and operations. So I shared with you those mandated education costs. This takes everything else into consideration. All of our general education teachers, things that we offer like art and music and physical education, our technology, operations day-to-day, keeping 5 buildings open, clean, safe for kids and teachers to come in. Our transportation expenses, you can see for the FY26, that's at $1.2 million. And where you see the offset here, this is in school choice. So I know school choice is a hot button issue for our community. And I know that there are people who are big proponents of school choice and who are staunch advocates of school choice. And I will actually be making my recommendation to school committee on Wednesday night this week about looking at school choice for the upcoming school year. I don't want to give you any spoilers, so you'll have to tune in. So we are looking at spending about $2 million of school choice for this upcoming school year to balance our budget. And one of the scary things, I think, for myself and for Christine, and I never want to speak for her, but this is a conversation we have all the time, is that what happens when that money dries up? If we get out of the school choice game, or we bring all of those things down, or people decide that Norton is no longer a desirable school community, what happens? How do we close that gap moving forward? You can't close a $2 million gap overnight. Those would be huge, huge cuts for us. So whenever we're able to have some savings, we try to take money out of school choice and not use as much school choice and be able to save it for further down the road. So that, I think, is something for us all to be aware of. Once you start using school choice funds for staffing, it's very, very difficult to go backwards. Okay, so this is just like a little definition for you, Mr. Units. If you want to scroll all the way down, this is some of those revolving funds that we were talking about. So school choice is our biggest revolving account. For the upcoming school year, we're projecting to use about $2 million, and that will offset about 4.3 staff positions. It's important to know that if you take the $2 million and divide it by 4.3, that's not what we're paying those people. There's a lot of other things that we're also going to use school choice for to offset. And I say that and you're laughing, but I just want to make sure that people at home know that is like how we really do the math. School choice pays for all of our teaching and learning materials. So if we need glue sticks, or we need notebooks, or we need copy paper, or whatever we may need, school choice funds that. School choice funds all of our technology. We are a one-to-one district. All of our students have Chromebooks from grade 2 all the way through 12. Shockingly, middle schoolers are not super responsible with Chromebooks, and they break all the time. Anything we have to do with repairing, all of that comes out of school choice. And then anything else that we, has been seen as extra over the years. We have a brand new reading program in kindergarten through grade 5. That was paid for by school choice. Circuit breaker, this is the reimbursement from the state for special education. As I mentioned, it can't go to our budget. It has to go directly towards those tuition expenses. We have a facilities revolving for custodial overtime, or we pay part of our director of facilities. 50% of his salary comes out of the facilities revolving, and we pay some of our custodians out of that as well. Many of our families in town pay for our Little Lancers preschool program. We take in about $286,000, that's what we're projecting for next year, and that will be for staff people. Transportation goes to offset the transportation costs. And then this tuition line is something that is very small at the moment, but we do see it increasing in the upcoming years. So this is currently, we have one student that is from another community that they did not have a special education program that they were able to create for this student. And we had one, it was really good. And so they tuitioned that student into us and paid for their student to come. And then the athletics revolving, anyone that has a high schooler, we know we're all paying for athletic fees for our kids to participate in athletics. And again, that is only a small portion of our athletic budget and does not go to any staff positions. It goes to stipends for the coaches, field time, rink time, uniforms, all of those things that go along with running a successful athletic program.
On the school choice, you said that you're choosing to use $2,061,000. What's in the balance of the account?
Christine, do you know that?
Right now, today, is around $1 million. But, so we kind of stopped spending-ish right now. We're gonna try to save, and then the next several months that we receive, because we get monthly payments, we're hoping to save that to then it just keeps rolling.
So sad to hear that. I thought you were gonna say there's like $4 million in it, and you're only trying to use it.
There used to be.
All right.
Whatever I can do to make this a little bit lighter.
Same type of question. For the revolving accounts that are being used here, what is the projected balance that we don't use?
We always hope to save.
Christine, do you want to come? She doesn't want to, but she will.
Need a portable mic.
So we always hope to save around the same amount that we started off the year prior. So it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. Athletics is one that dipped pretty low for a while. No, it never ends with zero. We always have to have a rolling balance, but we always try to maintain the same amount each year. So school choice, we've been lucky. We've been able to save at the end of every single year around $1 million. Last year was a little over that. We're trending less than that this year, but we're trying to make up for that again.
I believe as part of the end of the month budget updates, we include revolving accounts, correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. So just wanted to make sure you guys were getting that info as well. Thank you. Steve, did that answer your question? Perfect. Okay. And then the next page actually brings us into some of these other revenue sources that we were talking about earlier. So the federal SPED entitlement. This actually subsidizes 19 and a half paraprofessionals. early childhood, that is a preschool grant. And then we have the Title I, the 2A, the Title III, and the Title IV. So as you can see, that's over $1 million there, and that is something that would be a big loss to us if those federal programs ended up being eliminated down the road. I know there is conversation about moving some of the educational things to Health and Human Services. However, I mentioned this to my committee at our budget workshop, and I want to mention it to all of you as well, is that typically what happens with those things that are under Health and Human Services, for example, Medicaid, goes right into the general fund at the town level, and it's not something that the district would get in addition to whatever our percentage increase is. Right now, we get these grants in addition to whatever the community is able to give us each year. So we would need to figure out how that would work, because just rolling it into the percentage increase would not help us in any way. We would really need to take a look at that as a community.
Just curious, is there any conversations going on today where we're starting to talk about the medical area offsetting some of these special ed costs?
So that's currently the role of Medicaid. And when you think about some of the services that students receive, for example, occupational therapy or speech and language therapy, those are, depending on the needs of the student, those are things that we do get reimbursed for. And it's obviously never 100% reimbursement, right? But that is something that we on the school side, we provide a service, we track all of the data, we submit all of the data to Medicaid. One of the things I think that, and I don't know that it's going to happen right now with so many other things that might be changing, we're very fortunate that we have students that, because of their medical needs, may not have been in a public school 15 to 20 years ago. They may not have been with us 15 to 20 years ago. And so, because we have an incredible, medical system, especially in Massachusetts, and they're able to do amazing things with newborns and preemies, and we need to look as a system at what else is being covered for students. And that's something that I think is a very long time coming conversation, but it's also not going to be a popular one because the medical community is not going to want to pay for it either.
They're starting, hopefully.
Depends on who you ask. I mean, last year we received about $160,000 in Medicaid reimbursement that came to the town. It's better than nothing. All right, and then this page, and I apologize that this is taking so long, I'm just walking through the whole book. These are our school choice funds. You can see what we've taken in each year and what we've expended, and as Christine mentioned, we try to save a little bit every year as well at the end of the year. So finally, this is just some information on school choice, what our numbers look like, what the average class size is. I'm not going to share that information with you right now, but I will go to the unfunded request page. And so one of the things that I'm a firm believer in is we need to submit to you the budget that makes the most sense for keeping and maintaining what we have for our students. We want to maintain that same high quality instruction. But just because something isn't in the budget, it doesn't mean that we don't need it. So these are things that are not in the budget that have either been eliminated in the recent past or our needs for the upcoming school year. So right now we're down a 5th grade teacher at the Yale. We only have 7 sections. It was fine when we had a small little group coming through, but now the class sizes are getting bigger. And so really, we would really love to be able to add another 5th grade there. Kindergarteners, what we're finding with kindergarteners is many of them are coming to school for the very first time in kindergarten. A lot of them are not having a preschool experience. And if you have 24 5-year-olds in your classroom and you are the only adult, I remember getting my own kids, and I only have 2 of them, out to go anywhere, whether it was to go play in the snow or go to Target or just to get out of the house in the morning. I was outnumbered. These teachers are severely outnumbered. And you know, the most important time to intervene with students if they're falling behind, if they don't know what their name looks like written, if they don't know their letters and their letter sounds, it's kindergarten. And so we would really love to have at least part-time assistants in those kindergarten classrooms. And I'm not going to talk at you about all the other things that are on here, but those are just 2 things. And then the next couple pages within the packet are these school-based budgets. And this we brought back this year by popular demand. Oh, we want to go back?
Yeah, just, Madam Chair, I have a question on that. Can you just, on the unfunded requests,
Yeah.
can you put a number 1 through 10 on these?
They're in rank order.
So they're ranked orders at the top. So if you had your 5th grade teacher as your number 1 priority?
At this moment, yep.
Okay, thank you.
And I did that on purpose, Zach, for that question, and I probably should write that somewhere on the page, but our school committee asked me as well, and I said to Christine, I said, I'm gonna go through and change this around, and some things I put up higher than others, and that was just kind of felt like based on what our needs are at this moment. And I would love to bring back world language at the middle school, but there are other things that we need to do first. Thanks. This was something that you all mentioned that you missed seeing in our budget book last year. So we wanted to make sure that we pulled everything out by building as well. And so on that first page, you have our 3 elementary schools, JCS, LGN, and the Yale. And then the second page is Norton Middle School and Norton High School. And then third page is the salary comparison across the district. And one of our own staff members asked if we would include central office there, and so we did. So this is a salary comparison for you as well. So are there any questions on those last couple pages of, by school or the salary comparisons?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
just one, and I haven't had a chance to look at the schedule that you guys provided today on salaries with the breakdown.
Okay.
But will that detail number of positions, will that tie in, say, I'm not sure right now, but principal salary in school? Is that one person or?
That's 2.
That's 2. So can we see that in the detail?
We could absolutely do that. I think that would probably make it a little bit easier. And quite honestly, that's an easy thing for us to do. There are a couple places where people are split. Just like for a very long time, part of my salary was paid out of like teaching and learning, and so part of my salary was paid out of supervisor. So we would put like a 0.5 or something along those lines. But I think that would be easy for us to do. Well, and I understand the point of we don't want to think that the middle school principal is making $270,000, because he certainly is not. I'm not making that kind of money, so.
The high school principal's doing better.
Well, that's 3 people. And I appreciate that, because I think you're asking questions that people are making assumptions on, right? And I know that's why we have these conversations in public, so we can say, oh, no, that's not one person, that is this many people. But I appreciate that.
So,
Oh.
Doctor, when you're looking at like the LG nurse salary total, and the increase is 9.53, that is all salaries, and that's the steps, the slides,
Yes.
and the whole pack.
And so the way, sometimes what happens is a small school like LGN doesn't have a huge number of staff, but they might have a bunch of young staff who are still moving on that salary scale versus the Yale school, and I'm just making things up right now, like who maybe has a lot of veteran staff and they're not moving as much. So those things all kind of fluctuate into why the increases look so much more in one place over other.
Which is also why the central office is 2.77, because you don't really have a lot of steps and slides.
Correct, and there's not a lot of us when you think about it. I mean, there's myself, there's Christine, there's very few of us.
Just the elephant in the room is that we have a 3.5% window, and just the whole system's broke right across the board as far as how do we fund year after year.
Absolutely.
And also,
So earlier today, the House Ways and Means Committee met at UMass Amherst, and last week I wasn't able to get out there today because we had this and a million other things, but I shared my own thoughts with Representative Howitt and Representative Chasen and also Senator Feeney. And I'm more than happy to share the letter that I sent with Sandy, and she can get it to all of you. And what I basically said is like, listen, this is the reality in Norton. This is what our budget looks like. And I don't blame the community that we didn't get an override. I blame the fact that the system is broken. Norton is one of 211 communities that are only getting minimum aid from this Chapter 70 formula. And so there's a bill out there that is, very much in its infancy stage that's looking at the Fair Share Amendment and how much more of that money we can put towards public education. Because when you take a look at Norton compared to some of our surrounding communities, you take a look at Attleboro, we're getting $75 a student and they're getting $600 a student. Our students deserve every penny of that money too. And just because they believe we can make it happen, it doesn't mean we actually can. And so I think it's very important for myself, for the school committee, for all of you, for the select board, for Mike, to kind of create this cohesive, like, we're all in this together. We know that we can't do it alone as a community. We know that things have to change. And so really taking our efforts and advocating for some of those changes with our representatives. So that's what I'm trying to do on my end. I know the Mass Association of School Superintendents is extremely active in that work. Mass school committees, regional schools, the business officials, we're all kind of trying to, push that message home because the inequities are just continuing to grow. And I understand that urban communities have their own needs and rural communities have their own needs. But we really are being forgotten in the process. And, we talk about no child left behind. It's like our kids are being left behind because we cannot keep the same level of, instruction that other places are able to do. So what I would say is, I understand the 3.5. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't come to you with what the real needs of our schools are. And so, when Christine and I were able to get it down to 4.96, I was pretty excited. Because it's a very big difference from where we were last year. I was really proud of that. And so what I would also say is that we were very fortunate to get money this fall at Fall Town Meeting and be able to reinstate a few positions. But we weren't able to reinstate everything because it's very difficult to find a music teacher in November. It's very difficult to find a reading interventionist in November. So we got really creative with that money and we said, okay, well, if the Yale music teacher finishes here, maybe he can come over to the middle school and teach some band after that. We were really, really creative. So what I would implore the Finance Committee to think about is there a way that the public schools could get a little bit more upfront and not come back? And I have to ask Mike, the answer is always no if you don't ask. Maybe we could get a little bit more upfront and then not come back for a supplemental in the fall. But I know you all have very difficult decisions in front of you, and it's my responsibility, and I take it seriously, that I want to make sure that I'm advocating for my kids and my staff as much as possible.
Dr. O'Neill, so you talk about not needing money in the fall, but so many decisions happen in the summer, like you mentioned about the contracts, and you may find out about more out-of-district costs and things. So what if that 4.96 doesn't end up being enough for what you actually need for September?
So I think what's really important is that we have to make the commitment to live within our means when it comes to certain things. If we're not able to make it work when it comes to contracts, then we're going to have to look at other ways to have savings. And so money is not finite. And I think we have a great relationship with all of our unions, and we are going through this process with as much honesty as we can. But we would have to make adjustments if we're not able to make that happen with other things. And we've got a few things up our sleeve that we're hoping, potential retirements that we're just hearing whispers about, nothing official, or, we we've done it this way for a long time. What if we did it this way? So those are the things that we're really looking at and really trying to be creative of. When it comes to out-of-district special education, those are things that we can never predict. And we have not come back to the town to ask for a special education increase since I've sat in this seat. And we always make our best efforts to not come back.
Just to follow up with that, I don't know, I guess a part of me would feel like it would be a little unfair for you to not ask the town for supplemental funds in the fall if you need it. I mean, depending on what's going on with free cash, I mean, we do that for other departments if they're in need.
Yeah, and there's no way for any of us to really know what that's going to look like at this time. You know, Mike and James and Christine and I, we are in contact a lot. Like, they have a lot of things that they're not sure of yet, just like we have a lot of things that we're waiting on. But it's very difficult for us to cut staff in June and then bring them back in November. It doesn't, and I know that both the chiefs, you know, they're looking for staff too, right? It's much easier to hire a firefighter in November than it is to hire a second grade teacher.
I think they would argue with you on that.
It's probably much more difficult to hire a firefighter any time of the year.
Anytime.
Dr. Neal, you're aware that we all individually received many of the same form letter. And it was, I think, penned by somebody outside the district because they referred to us as elected official. And for the record, we're not, we're appointed. So right out of the gate, that was kind of a flag. But it kind of implied that there's money that we're not willing to spend if we have it. And I think James is on, hopefully, I don't know if he's still on there. James, are we hiding any money or not spending money every year that we could?
Did anyone check under the couch?
No, seriously, it really looks like we're trying to hide millions of dollars that's available. And I'm not aware of it. I've asked the other members here. We're not aware of anything that's not on the plate that we don't try to divvy up as part of that pie. And we know the pie is not big enough. It wasn't big enough last year. And this year we have more responsibilities with the same pie. So again, it doesn't go away. But James, any input on the hidden money?
Good evening. Fortunately, I'm looking for it too myself. Like what it is. Every penny we take in has been accounted for. We have free cash every year. It's not different than any other year. Last year was a little higher than usual. I expect free cash to go down a little bit this year, but don't hold me to it because I don't know if any surprises will come along between now and June 30th. So we'll see how that comes out. But we are playing with what we have. We can only appropriate what we can with taxes within Proposition 2.5 and with what the state is being given us every year, which it hasn't been much of an increase. State aid is pretty much the same every year. Other than that, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'll be here.
Thank you, James. I can't speak for who authored the letter, but I will tell you that I received it as well as the school committee. And I think that when you are looking at funding and you are not elbow deep in it day to day, like some of us are, it's challenging to kind of see how it all makes sense from a fiscal perspective. And I think the hope is always that there's more money to be had. But 22 years in Norton, for me, I've had many kids in my classroom. One year I had 28 kids teaching second grade. I think that's probably all I can say about the letter. But I did receive it as well, and I don't know who the original, but we've all received the same thing. So, and I think it's the teachers and our educators are trying to get the word out.
And our job is to look at that pie and try to
Absolutely
handle the whole town, not just one department or anything else.
And I think you guys have a very difficult job. And I appreciate the fact that, as you said, you are appointed officials, you are volunteers. No one's getting a whopping salary for sitting here night after night trying to figure it all out. So I appreciate the work you do.
Madam Chair?
Stefani?
You just mentioned class sizes, and so that just made me wonder what class sizes look like this year compared to others in general.
At the high school, they are definitely higher. The high school schedule is really hard to pin down when it comes to like what's an average class size, because you might have 30 kids in Spanish 2, because it's a class that most students will have to take, but you might have 15 in, AP Physics, because that is kind of a niche course that not everyone is, chomping at the bit to take. So it makes it really difficult. So there are core classes when we think about like Spanish 2 or English 10 or algebra, where we have 20 to 30 students in those classes, and that's way too many, quite honestly. But one thing that we did do last year is that we preserved elementary class size. We did, of all the cuts that we made, we did not make any cuts to elementary class size, and so those numbers look really good. They're ranging from 18 to 24 in grade 5. I would love for our kindergarten and first grade classrooms to have 18. Like, that's a great number for kindergarten and first grade. Second and third, you can take like 22, 23. But then the 5th grade one, next year we're looking at 27 with a bigger group coming in. That, to me, that's too many in 5th grade. Middle school, as you may recall, we had that small bubble in grade 6. So we kind of did like a team and a half model, and our 6th graders crossed from purple to white to take math or ELA. And so those class sizes are a little bit bigger there, just because they're spread amongst fewer staff. But typical middle school is about 24 to 26.
Madam Chair, this is on the same subject. So my son is in 5th grade at the Yale, and I'm pretty positive he has 28 children in his class.
Okay. That's the average, so
that was going to be his teachers are doing a phenomenal job, by the way.
Thank you.
But my question to you is going to be, I think this 5th grade class is bigger than the previous one, so how is that going to look going into 6th grade with the way you set up?
Yeah, so we've made adjustments to the middle school model within this budget and within the current staffing that we have to go back to 2 teams for grade 6.
Just, the town voted to approve the beautiful athletic fields that we're using today. What's the strategy to make sure that when that field reaches its useful life, which is X number of years, to replace, do we feel strongly that the charges that we're charging today will stay in a revolving account that we can use to replace the turf, replace anything that needs to be replaced?
That's a great question. And number one, thank you to our community for voting and paying for those fields, because they are really beautiful. And my office is right there, and there are kids on those fields every single day. So the fees that we take in go into a subsection of our facilities revolving account. And that money there is only for the athletic complex itself. So any payments or any costs that we have for the athletic complex, so if we have to have something done or repair, or we have to pay someone to be the field supervisor, whatever that may be, all of that comes out of there. And then the rest of those funds are saved for the eventual repair or replacement of that turf. So we actually look at the fees every single year. It's on our docket for later this spring. And so Christine and I will sit down, we'll sit with Erin Sumner, who's our athletic director. We'll review what other communities are doing. We'll take a look at kind of who our competition is in the area, because you want to not outprice yourself so no one comes. You want to make it a competitive price where you're still making money. So that's something that we usually do around May. We'll take a look at that.
Do you feel, I know it's early, but do you feel net neutral for replacing that field?
Oh, it's really early. And we've only kind of been fully open for less than 2 years. So I'd say we've probably been taking in for about 18 months. And we definitely are, very happy with what that's looked like. If we multiply that out over 12 years, I think that, and again, the costs are so hard to predict, right? Because what I could think of as a reasonable number now, 10 to 12 years from now, who knows what that would cost. I would say we were probably at 3/4 at that point. But again, it's really going to depend on what costs look like down the road. Mansfield just put in a beautiful brand new turf field there at their high school. They are not renting it out at all. They're keeping it just for their student athletes and community. So we're one of the nicest properties around right now. And we have soccer out there almost every single night. NEFC Soccer Club is out there. We've got some tournaments that come to town, and hopefully they're, having lunch or dinner at some of our restaurants as well. But we'll give you guys an update as well, of course.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Zach.
Earlier today, through the chair, I asked the accountant to give me a picture of what we truly spend on education, all education in town. That's everything from Southeastern Regional to health insurance for the teachers and so on and so forth. And it's not to pick on the schools. It's a little touched on a little bit what was brought up at your public hearing with some people, but jiving percentage is what's spent. And you can have a copy of this, Jen, when you sit down. I'm not gonna, it's not my numbers, it's James. But we're spending around $50 million a year on education in this community when it comes to the fixed and shared expenses, the health insurance, notes that we have.
I was gonna say our debt.
Yeah.
James actually shared something similar with Christine and I not long ago.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm just saying, I think that should be put in this booklet, and not to pick on schools. It's just for the community to see, this is what we're spending on education.
And it's really close to that 70-30 split when you add those things in, correct?
My scratch math was 67%.
Okay.
But I could be wrong. That's just the back of the napkin. But that's what James gave me today. But I just think that should be presented to the community so they understand that it's not 37 million, whatever your number is here. It's more in the 50 million range that we are spending on education. Because people look at the numbers, you're only spending 40%, whatever it may be. And I know that came up also at your public hearing. And kind of the same thing on the other departments when they say, well, let's do an article for this. Well, why isn't it in your budget? Should be in your budget for full transparency.
I appreciate that, Zach, and it's interesting because I believe Mr. Schleicher, our school committee chair, actually reached out to James for very similar info, and then he shared it with Christine and I, actually in response to the letter that we were talking about earlier. And so, of course, as a superintendent of Norton Public Schools, I don't want the money for Southeastern counting against me, but I can say that publicly with good humor, right? So, however, when you're talking about as a community, we spend X amount, all of those things need to be counted and considered. And so you always hear about that 70-30 split, right? That's like where most towns strive to be, in that region. So we're there. When you take a look at all of those things. And I could stand up here for hours and hours and hours and tell you about all the other things that we need as schools, but I'm also a realist, and I also know how to read a room, because last year, the community spoke very loud and clear about an override and what they felt about it. And so it was defeated handedly. And so I'm not going to run the same playbook as I ran last year and say, we need all these things, because I know that's not going to happen. So we tried to come to you this year with a budget that we felt was, number one, represented our true level service needs, and was also reasonable.
Yeah, I'm not questioning.
Oh, no. And so I hope that the committee sees that, and that, I appreciate that info.
Public information, so the person that doesn't follow the weeds, the hours that we spent here can say, okay.
People aren't watching at home tonight?
No.
All three of them? Two of them.
We got bad ratings.
Well, James works for us, so I'm not sure he counts.
Still awake, Captain Fuller?
Oh, So when we host events at the school, I will say how many of the people in the audience do not work for us, and that's my actual count. So if I've got 10 staff members that are there for a presentation and 3 parents, my count is 3.
Well,
Because otherwise. Any other questions?
One more, Madam Chair. I haven't heard anything, and could be in this pile of mess I have in front of me, about the middle school roof. What happened with that?
We were approved for the study. We're going through the study now.
Okay.
And then we'll have to come back to the town for the rest of the funding. But we were approved. It's moving right along. So we're going to get that done after all this time, which is really great.
Not too many years ago, the cost we're given for the study would have paid for the roof. Which is great.
100%. And you know, it's interesting, Mr. Schleicher, because you've been here a while, and you know when we built that building, the town took on the whole cost themselves, and we paid for it as a community. But the roof has given us problems since day one. And so it'll be really amazing.
We sprayed a lot of water around the library just to try to figure out where the leaks were sometimes.
You just can't make it up. But it's funny that 25 years later, we're still talking about it.
Jen, can I ask a question about, obviously you can't state specifics, but has there been any discussion about if you didn't get the 4.96, what does that look like? I mean, I know that's still a little bit higher than what we.
Yes, we absolutely have a plan. Christine and I have a short list of, what we would be doing first. Ultimately, the first places that we would cut would be those positions that we reinstated at fall town meeting, just because those were the last ones to come in. So we would start there. We would also take a look at some of our other line items and see if there are ways that we can move some things around. We would potentially look at, and I'm just kind of talking off the cuff, see if there's any incentives that we could do in terms of retirement for people. There's not a lot left to cut. And so, a $700,000 cut is much more manageable than a $4.4 million cut, which is what we did last year, but I don't want to do the $700,000 either. So those would be the first positions that we would eliminate.
And how far in advance do people have to tell you that they're going to retire? Is there a deadline?
There is no date.
Oh, there is no date.
No.
Okay. Interesting. All right.
It's very interesting.
Is there any other questions for Jen first? Before? All right.
I brought up
Thank
an
you very
article,
much.
I found an article back in 1998 that Norton hired a consultant to inspect a school roof as in recent weeks. The roof has leaked under dress from the heavy rains, doing some slight damage to the building. And 27 years later, same old problems with the roof.
Some things never change. Thank you, Peter. Thank you all for having us tonight. We greatly appreciate it. And please don't ever hesitate to reach out if you have any other questions.
Thank you.
Dr. O'Neill and Christine. We got you up at that podium, Christine.
You learn some new every day from the mayor, Peter Wiggins.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Anyone else have anything? Oh, my goodness, I have a question. The April 1st meeting? What's going on with that?
April 1st at 7:15.
Right, but I was hearing that select board was having an issue with that.
I don't know if they're going to change it or if there can be some select board members there, but not a quorum. I'll check.
Are we not meeting the 31st then?
We are still here.
We still are, okay. I won't be here at first.
Okay. Okay.
Mohawk, see right now, you can see all 11 grand hotels, so I'll be there for a few days.
Anyone have anything else?
What budget had only seen?
Treasurer, collector, and all the borrowing and health benefits. Should be talking about that. Who else is on that?
Library assessors, treasure collector, tax title foreclosure, maturing debt, benefits, like when it's like, yes.
When do you give your recommendations, Mike? Because that's one of the things we need to start moving forward too, correct?
Yep. Probably about the second week.
Other questions, or?
Madam Chair, motion to adjourn.
All right, have a motion to
Second.
adjourn. Oh, yeah, we don't have to do roll call. Did we, we're on here.
Oh, can you say aye?
Yeah, so we can just say aye. Okay, motion second.
All in
Favor?
Aye. Opposed?
Yes, to make it different.